Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Tonight, blessing the band stage is one of the stalwarts of jazz who's left an imprint in the industry by way of fusing the great American roots experience by way of gospel, jazz, as well as R&B and classical and all other forms of African forms of music in between. Pianist Cyrus Chestnut tonight is playing music from his current #1 CD in the country right now, which is entitled There's a Sweet, Sweet Spirit, which is on High Note Records. Now, this is the second trio recording, the Power Trio, which features the great Lenny White on drums, as well as Buster Williams on bass, and also the great Steve Wilson on vibes. Tonight I had a chance to sit down and talk about how he's been able to create some very powerful music with this combination, as well as talk about his role at Howard University as professor. And also we sit down and talk about how he's been able to successfully communicate the worlds of classical as well as gospel and world music into his music. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the highlights of the Power Trio featuring the great Cyrus Chestnut on piano, as well as the great Buster Williams on bass and Lenny White on drums. Here on the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard, here in New York City. You know, every time we do this, there's a progression forward musically. And this is the Power Trio. This is the second or third project that you have had Lenny and the great Buster Williams. This album, congratulations, is #1 on the Jazz Week chart. And by the way everyone is receiving this album, this is really social urban music.
Well, that's the intention, you know. We just put some good music out in the atmosphere, and to honestly put people in a better place. You know, no tricks, no gimmicks. You know, just some good, naturally good music. That's all we're trying to do.
You know, Cyrus, this album, you are everywhere. And also, we got to put a caveat out there also. Steve Nelson is also on this record.
Yes, Steve. Yeah, you know, I always wanted to do a record like this. Is you know to get a chance to really, and yeah, I have to say, play with the cats. Because as far as I'm concerned, you know, Buster, Letty, and Steve Nelson, they're the cats. You know, when I got to town, they were holding court. So it's like, you know, to be able to do something and to be able to be considered friend on the bandstand with them, that I don't take that lightly, you know. It's, oh man, you know, I'm very grateful. And then furthermore, for them to be on the bandstand with me, to record, it's like, yeah.
You know, this album, you are doing a myriad of different music. You're doing Bobby Hutcherson, which is a tribute, who we just passed away. And you're doing Miles Davis. And then you're bringing on down to what Isaac Hayes says, Soulsville with stylistics. You know,
Yeah.
Tommy Bell, Linda Creed. You
Yeah.
make me feel brand new.
You know, always want to try to find something different. Um, the norm in doing things as such, you can, when it comes to the voice, well, you do the voice in a certain way, but I wanted to just find a little different way, something just a little bit different than what everyone else does. And so to use a vocal trio as almost as a vocal section, a horn section, a vocal section, not having the singing just the standard oohs and ahs, but really challenge them and really getting inside, you know, getting inside the music and really bringing out something different, you know. And so it came out really nice, and I'm grateful that people enjoy it.
You know, you've always been about the tradition of urban black music. And Ray Charles did that with the Raylettes, and it's sort of what Barry White did with Love Unlimited.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. You know, we have such a rich culture. And, you know, it's who I am. That's who I strive to be. I'm a person about finding out my culture, who I am, and presenting that. For those who wish to listen, they know that I am a person of African descent, and there's a certain culture that's kin to me, and so I'm not trying to be anyone else. I'm just trying to be me, and I'm searching just to find exactly who I am, and just be that and present that.
to Bobby Hutcherson. God rest his soul. You do two compositions on this new album, and I want to ask you what Bobby meant to you as a musician, and his compositions. He brought a very different to the language of jazz.
I was very grateful that I actually had the opportunity to work with Bobby Hutcherson. Um, we was on a cruise ship doing the gig, and it got a chance to do a set together. And then also, I never forget, I was working with Kevin Mahogany in Virginia, right outside of D.C., and he was on the set. And we got in this very serious conversation, even before we started working together. He said, you know, you have to think about density. You play a whole myriad of notes. When do you allow time for the listener to hear what you did? Or more importantly, for you to listen to what you've done so you know where to go. And that's one thing that stuck in my head. It was like one of those very serious life lessons. And then to have the opportunity to be on the bandstand with him and to see that in action, oh man, wow. That's all I can say is wow. And so, yes, to play his compositions is very special. And to have of who I will say in the name of Steve Nelson, the person of Steve Nelson, to be able, I think he is the heir apparent. You know, he's that generation closest. I mean, of course, there's others, but I mean, Steve is the one that has been the closest to that water. And so, when I came to New York, it was we learned about. It wasn't that you came, you did apprenticeships, you studied under people. You just didn't come to New York and just did your thing. Before you could get on a gig or before you could get a record, they want to know who you played with, what apprenticeships, and so and I think in many ways that's kind of missing because you got the younger generation just coming up, just doing their own thing, but then many times I think it's very important to spend some time with the folks of the earlier generation because where they're trying to go, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 they've been there before. And what they're going to offer to you and what perspective they're going to give you is just going to solidify and help you to go forward. So, my times of coming into New York and hanging out at the Jazz Cultural Theater in Barry Harris's joint, seeing Junior Cook, C Sharp, and seeing Barry go to the classes and just sit under these great masters, to be able to travel with James Moody, Jimmy Heath, Slide Hampton, to be able to work with John Hendricks, that's something very special because you're going to learn something that even if you play with your peers, mind you, they might have something very, very prolific to share, but it's nothing like getting down close to the source because it's just going to give you just that much more, it's going to give you more clarity about who you are, I think.
And we talked earlier. Your last trio, Neil and Desron. Those two guys right now, Lou, what you are absolutely talking about because, like you said, they're leaders in their own right, and I love what both of them are doing on the band stage as well as off the band stage.
Yeah, they're making it happen.
Yeah.
They're making it happen, and yeah, it's just a great blessing. I love just to see them and, be able to support them, to help them do their thing.
Cyrus, two gentlemen on the band stage. We have to talk about Buster and we have to talk about Lenny. Lenny comes from the whole fusion and straight ahead, and then Buster comes from the whole myriad of post-bop and bop. What is it like playing with both of these guys on the band stage, and what are you getting from both of them off this band stage, and also when you recorded these two recordings?
Well, it's so many lessons about music, lessons about life. And a lot of times it's just in the conversations, just talking just about what's going on. You learn so much. And then you hear these gentlemen play, and and I just marvel like, wow, you know, they have so much authority in what they want to play and how they play it. They have their conception is so strong, and they know what they want to do. They know how it's supposed to be, and so, I'm just marveling in that. I'm like a kid in the candy store, so to speak. I'm at the wheel of a beautiful Rolls Royce or a Bentley. Like wow. You know, and it's like when you like in like one of these fine cars, and you put the car in drive, and you just slightly step on the gas, it just knows where to go, and it just takes you there. And even if you try to make a certain move, it knows where you want to go, and it's like, oh, okay. And then they bring something to the table. It's like, wow, I never thought about it that way. And so, it's I love it. 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 I I cherish every moment.
Cyrus, how is it that you're still learning about your African roots and communicating what you've learned and how you play the piano, but also how you're incorporating it with gospel as well with soul? Because the Soulful Connect came out tonight with You Make Me Feel Brand New, but also the idiom of blues too.
Well, I'm very grateful. I teach, as you know, I teach at Howard University, and I'm around some great minds, and actually it's inspired me to really get in and start finding out about the culture. You know, there's the there's the African American and how one is affected by Western European culture, musically all around. But then nothing's really said about what happened about that culture before before the African came to got to the American continent, you know. And so that's my research. I want to know what happened. I want to know what they was what was the music, what was the culture, and that way I can kind of put together the dots, because it's very easy to find out the relationship of the African to the European culture and how one has responded. You know, we can go and find all of that American history. You know, find that. But then, what about what happened? You know, what about before? Um, the slaves that were brought over. What were they singing? What was their concept? How did they interpret things? And so that's what I'm on the search for. I want to find that out. And so, therefore, knowing that, then I can make, you know, then there's truth that I can know and share. So if I decide to do something and stay within within the African European concept, cool, that's no problem. But some things, you know, there's like there's like something inside me. It's crying. It's something different. And so because of the fact of that, because that's happening, I have to go and find out what that is. First and foremost, for my own knowledge, and then once I know it, then you know it can be shared. You know, there's a certain truth that must be known. A certain truth that must be known. Certain parts of our culture have to be preserved. We all are charged to know what it is. You know, it's one thing to know it and then decide to go differently, but then I think it's a crime for one just to kind of, you know, don't even consider it because you don't even know it.
Right.
And it's important because once you know who you are, and that's how I think you could really go forward with authority and and clarity, you know.
You know, Randy Weston has spent his whole life going to Africa, living there, and coming back. And he wants people like you and myself and other musicians to get connected to the motherland. And I think it's very, very rich what you're doing as an educator, because you're communicating everything that the forefathers who you played with, you're handing it down to another generation, and that's very delicate.
And that's what's supposed to happen. You know, I had the opportunity a few years ago to go to Senegal, and it just revolutionized. It just changed my life. I always say when I got to Senegal, that's when I actually heard the drum. Because when I heard them play it, when I heard them play the drums, it didn't hit me in the head. It hit me in my soul. I didn't need to count anything. I started moving, and it was like I knew what it was. I didn't know how, you know, but I just knew what it was. And so it's like, yeah, I want to know more about that culture. I want to do the research. I want to do the research and try to figure out, you know, just real quick, when you think about the spiritual, all right, and if I stand corrected on this, Harry T. Burley wrote a lot of things, and Antonin Dvorak, I believe, really loved it, of which he was influenced. Some of that information he actually put in some of his compositions, the New World Symphony and all. And I think it was around 1890 when there was a school open in New York, and it was open on the stipulation, and I stand corrected on this, I believe this is right. It was open on the oh Lord, it was the reason. Dvorak opened it, but the only way that he would open it, is that the African Americans could study music.
Mm.
So spirituals are sung a certain way, and I think that the spirituals are sung based on the adaptation to the Western European culture. My question is, how was the spiritual sung before that? How was the folk music sung before that? How was the blues sung before they would put the eighth notes and 16th notes and triplets?
Tonight, I haven't experienced this in your playing in quite a while. The classical side. You're laughing, but here's a funny thing. I have a segment on Bob James I'm getting ready to put out very, very soon. And Bob and I talked about this for a big part of our dialogue, in how he was able to take classical and put it with jazz. And tonight you took Debussy and you took Satie, and I just got to ask you about your classical background. And do you still listen to a lot of classical music to seek a lot of inspiration when you write?
I'm starting to do that a lot more now. I'm just, I've got a lot of music from various different composers. I just like listening to it. When I started studying the music, I was just given the Calmus edition, the yellow book, the Schirmer edition, the gray book, the Calmus edition. And I was just to play the notes. I wasn't encouraged to listen to anything. I was just following directions. But, so now I'm in the position now where I can actually sit and listen to this music and see where it's coming from harmonically and just kind of react to it. And, there are thousands of people who can play the repertoire, and it's my choice to go differently. I could be 1001, get a coach and sit there for a year or something working on a piece and go out and play it in all of these places. But you know what? That's not me. That's never been me. And I go back to around 8 or 9 years old at the Peabody Preparatory in Baltimore. I was studying Gregorian chants and different periods of music, but what we had to do, our assignments, is as we studied the music, we had to create something based on what we studied. So I was from a young age, I was put into a mode of creation. And so here I am now, you know, I could study the Baroque and play the Baroque, but no,
That's not you.
that's not me. I want to be inspired by the Baroque, and I have to find my way. Betty Carter, again, jazz is about finding out who you are. You know, I'm not a person who just wore a pork pie hat. You
right.
know, I grew up with Parliament. I'm listening to Little Richard. My mama had the CDs. King Curtis. You know, played Scott Joplin. All these things. Listen to Thelonious Monk by chance. It's all of these influences, and so all I'm trying to do is just operate from what's been given to me, and as it's given to me, I just try to just present it.
So would you say that now, at your point in your life, you've come full circle coming back to classical? Because that's the origins of the beginning of your training.
In a sense, but not coming back to it, not in a repertory sense, but really coming back to it, checking out to see where it is and figure out how I can relate to it in where I am now. So, for instance, it's like I could play the gymnopédie #1 in a strict 3, but no, I want to do it in a jazz waltz because that's how I feel it. I no disrespect to Brother Eric at all, but they're just, on my bandstand, we can come from a different point of view. It's just a different point of view. Take it or leave it. Same thing with Debussy. Gollywog's Cakewalk. It's done a certain way. And those composers, if you think about it, in the time that they were coming, they were listening to jazz. Debussy was listening to Jelly Roll. He was checking him out, what was going on, So why can't I check him out, check these cats out, and just offer my interpretation? No disrespect at all, but it's just my point of view. And if this is America, quote unquote, and if we are free to have our point of view, quote unquote, why can't I do it?
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. I'd like to personally congratulate Mr. Cyrus Chestnut on having the #1 jazz record here in the country on the Jazz Week's charts. Here for his brand new CD, There's a Sweet, Sweet Spirit, which is now available on the High Notes record imprint. Features the great Buster Williams on bass, as well as Lenny White on drums and Steve Nelson on vibes. Make sure you go out and support this record, as well as their upcoming club dates. I'd like to personally also thank the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard for their warm hospitality as well. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.